All right. Welcome back, everybody. Today is trying to pull down the date, July 13th. That's cool. Not the 13th. Um, let's see. There's a couple things I wanted to focus on this conversation. I hear ancestors a lot, and I hear mm, things that sound like mine. I want to tell the story of my grandmother from my mother's side. Um, Back in October 2011, she passed away, and I was pregnant with my youngest daughter, my oldest daughter. Sorry, I was pregnant with my oldest daughter at the time, and she was born in January, so I was almost 7, 8 months along. And when she passed away, her ashes got split into two between my uncle and my cousin. Well, my uncle took the half, and he has a 3 and 5 year old grandkids at the time, and they knew nothing of my grandma. They kept that part away from them, and they didn't even know she passed. A few days later, they tell him that they see an old lady sitting on a bench that by the door that heads out to his garage, and that she looked sad and she had a black eye. Well, when my grandma passed away, she had a giant black eye. She fell a few days before she passed away, and a week or so later, after she passes, I find myself at my uncle's in Kansas City, Missouri, and everything's cool. I go to leave and drive back home. It's about a 40-minute drive, and I'm driving, and my kid's father is in the passenger seat, and he's holding my hand. And all of a sudden, I feel this pressure in the back seat, and like my lower back, as if someone's putting their knees in the seat, right? Um, and I try to ignore it at first, but then it gets stronger and stronger to where I turn around and I start to yell, like, "Would you knock it the F off?" And like mid sentence, I stop when I realize that there's nobody in the back seat. And all of this happened like in the span of 3 seconds. Like there was really no time to think. It was just like, okay, somebody's pushing in my seat. I'm just going to try to ignore it. But then it got harder and harder and harder, and to where I didn't even have kids yet. So the fact that I turned around to yell immediately like that, just that's how strongly I felt it. And I look forward, and my kid's dad is like, "What's wrong?" And I explained to him what just happened, and he's like, "Do you want me to drive?" And I'm like, "No." I just thinking back, I don't know how I didn't like jump out of the car and freak out and like, what the fuck was that? But at the time, it was just like, okay, that happened, and I just went on. I moved forward. Um, my family would joke that my grandma was going to come back reincarnated as my daughter because we knew she was going to be a girl. And the craziest part is her and my mom butt heads so much. And my mom said this because she reminds her of my grandma so much. And my daughter likes those choker black necklaces, and my grandma wore them all the time. And I asked my daughter once if she could pick any color eyeshadow, and it looked amazing. No matter what color you picked, it looked absolutely amazing. I'm like, "What color would you pick?" And she said blue. And my grandma was known for always wearing blue eyeshadow. We actually used to make fun of her because for those of you who were older, the Mimi and Drew Carey show, yeah, she reminded us of her growing up. So I'm not sure. I found that odd though. And then on my dad's side, my father's father, my grandpa, he actually passed away right after my parents found out they were pregnant with me. Um, they had an agreement. My mom was going to tell his mom, and then my dad was supposed to tell his dad. Well, my mom told my grandma, but my dad didn't tell my grandpa before he had a heart attack in his sleep and he passed away. Um, yeah, he died right before I was born, and I've always felt like my grandma was with me. Um, um, and butterflies, okay. I didn't even realize butterflies were a thing in my life until the last 2 years. I met somebody who pointed it out to me, but I had gotten butterflies to hang in my bathrooms, upstairs and downstairs, and I had a butterfly thermal because when I was at Walmart, it was the only design that I kind of liked, so I just picked it, and it was rainbow butterflies. And um, let's see, there's a story of wind chimes. My mom used to always buy wind chimes for my grandma, like for every holiday. And my mom was on Amazon one day and she's scrolling and she was like, "Oh, wind chimes," and she buys them, right? And I come home the next day and they're out in the front yard, and I'm like, "Whoa, what are you doing?" She's like, "Get them out of the house. Get them out of the house. I don't want them." She's like, "Weird shit's been happening. I've been having weird dreams." She's like, "It's grandma. I don't want grandma around. Just get them out." And so me not being wasteful, I take them to my job. Well, at the time, I was having an experience at work with a really, really like dark energy. It was the first time I ever felt any energy that had the potential to harm me. Like I was scared for my safety when I was around it, and it appeared at my work, and it was there, and it actually chased me out of the building a few times, and I was scared to go back in. And but when I took those wind chimes there, everything chilled. Like I could still feel something was there, but it wasn't harmful anymore. And um, I left that job and I went back there for a meeting with the owner. And when I came back home over the next week after that meeting, everybody in the house was getting weird feelings. My mom was talking to me, and then like she was looking at the TV but still talking to me. I was standing behind the couch, and she looks over and I'm not there. And she's like, "But I could have swore you were standing there." And I was like, "I was, but I walked away." And she's like, "No, you didn't. You were still standing there." And she was having weird dreams, and my kids were seeing things out of the corner of their eyes. And I thought maybe I brought that dark energy home. So I went back to the job and I asked them for my wind chimes back. And when I brought them home, that ended as well. Well, the wind chimes, come to find out, had butterflies on them. And a couple years ago, I was at work and I just put a fresh blade in the box cutter and I was cutting off the lid of a box. Well, I take the knife and I jam it straight into my other wrist. Okay. And, we have to tie it off, and we call the ambulance, and I go and get a couple stitches and I go right back to work, of course. But it left a scar of a butterfly on my wrist. And after that, I've noticed butterflies everywhere. I mean, where I live, the woods around my area, the huge field next to my apartments, it has wildflowers, which draws butterflies. And readers I've listened to speak of the butterflies they're noticing. And I never even noticed butterflies were in my life until that person pointed it out. And ever since then, I look around and I see butterflies. I mean, they're everywhere. Um, so yeah, there's a few instances of my grandma though where I've always felt like she's still with me. There'd be times I'd be looking for something, and I knew I had it in a certain place, and I'd look at that like on a stool, like I had say my phone on a stool, and I'd go to get it and it was gone. And I'd look all over the house for like 20 minutes, and then I come back by that same stool and my phone is sitting there, and it's like, okay, thanks, Grandma. I know you're here. Thanks for fucking with me. And I'd go on about my day. Um, I heard today that they've carried burdens for me, which makes sense because I asked my mom this like 5 years ago too, if she was the same, where it feels like anytime we go through an experience, we're able to just like somehow throw it over our shoulder and go on and not let it, you know. I used to think of it as a bad thing. I used to think that I was in denial, like I would do something and then be in denial about it, and so I just like poof, forget it. So if I forgot it, it didn't happen, like. But after hearing that, like it makes sense to me. Um, Anyways, okay. So that's the ancestral part. I always knew this growing up, but it recently hit me this week. My grandfather, it was either my grandfather or my great grandfather on my dad's side. They were Moila Shriners. He was a Moila Shriner. And in order to be a Shriner, you have to be a Mason. Um, Not all Masons are Shriners, but all Shriners are Masons. And Shriners is you have to be a Master Mason. You have to be at the highest degree before you can even be considered to join a Shriners group. So on my dad's side, I have that family, which is, money, work. Um, they were the valuable side of, you know, they had money, okay? My mom's side was the other. Um, Addiction and bad habits, bad relationships, always giving out our heart to other people and being attached and staying with it no matter how bad it was for us, and um, self-medicating, and just but like being just okay where they are, no matter whatever they're in or doing. It's just like they're okay. There's no desire to move forward, and I understand that because I've been through that in my life. So there's kind of a background of both genetics I come from. And every time I've heard it, breaking ancestral curse, I've thought of my grandma's side, because I gave my heart to my kids' father and it got crushed. And then I gave my heart to another man and it got crushed. And then recently, over the last 2 years, I gave my heart to a third man and it got crushed. And so I figured, just because they come along and you like them and they're cool, and doesn't mean you have to give them your heart, especially if it hurts you. You can realize that they're facing their own challenges and need to go through their own stuff, and that doesn't have to be your problem. And it's okay for you to move on. I felt like that was the greatest advice I ever given my daughter, was don't let any man just be with you intimately. Like, that is sacred. That is what makes creation. And you got to be careful with that. You got to hold it sacred, not just anybody that comes into your life can steal your heart if you let them. And if you're not careful, if you give it to the wrong ones, they can break it, which I know this is something that everybody, common sense, whatever. But then I found out the Bone Wheeler Shriners, and I'm like, okay, like, what does that mean for all of this? Like, what the F? And my grandmother's maiden name on my mom's side is Davis. And I found out, that's for another day. So I want to kind of pick up where I left off before about the liquid inside of the solid. So it turns out that when a liquid remains a liquid inside of a solid, it actually creates, let me see what it says. Oh, it's not, it's going to make me stop.